do we still need to transport him to the hospital, or can he, can sign SOR?
I think it'd be best to have him go to a hospital so they can do a full assessment.
I don't think there's gonna be any fluid blows that we can do in the field and make it feel very well.
Communicate with
Or within enough time while you're on scene.
What's
You're
that?
not gonna sit there on scene and give a whole
Yeah,
lot.
because if it goes off with that, he's gonna need to leave.
I would say with an L-VAD patient, I would always transport them somewhere.
And one thing, the people that at home, when he's hooked up to that thing at night, that by his power module, it tells the blood flow, and they already informed me they don't want that to be like over 7. But like his normally runs like 4.5 to 5.3, which means he's getting 4.5 liters going through per minute. It tells his blood flow. It tells how fast the machine is, running and everything. So if something goes out of whack on that, well then I would, or they would, someone would call to Indianapolis and say, well, his blood flow's real low or something, and then they would tell us what to do. Most of the time, anything that concerns this, that they can take care of before you guys would come. So if you had to come, it would be for probably something else, but
Usually.
it probably wouldn't be for that, but just you need to know how to handle them if you get them.
To be real honest and real straightforward with this situation, if I wasn't able to be here, which I'm one person, I cover the entire Midwest, I could essentially come in here and tell you like 3 or 4 things and be done and out of here in like 10 minutes to be able to take care of this guy. Don't unplug both cords at the same time because it shuts the pump off. Don't unplug the percutaneous lead because it shuts the pump off. Try really hard not to do compressions and find that black bag. Because either on a caregiver or in that black bag, you're going to have phone numbers, and those VAD coordinators can tell you anything you need to know to keep him safe. Does that make sense? I just feel like if you got somebody telling you how this works and what to do and what not to do, it makes sense in your head a little bit better. I can't give you every scenario, but I can tell you kind of how to.
Pieces and parts work.
Huh?
How the pieces and parts work.
Right.
Now, do you have more than one system controller?
Yeah. Yeah.
The extra one is in his black bag.
Black bag.
In the black bag, and carry the black bag with you at all times? I'm just thinking like, like if there was something, like if you were to fall, like, winter's here, obviously. If you were to fall and like the unit was to get wet or so on and so forth, you'd want to change the controller, right? Or would you?
You would never do that without a VAD coordinator telling you to do it.
Okay.
Ever. They wouldn't let me do that without a VAD coordinator.
Before we could bring him home, we had to learn how to do it, and it was power pump, or power person pump. So
Yes. It's really not a decision that you should make without a VAD coordinator telling you to do it. That's what I tell everybody. ICU nurses, doctors.
Because the risk of the unit actually getting damaged or getting wet is, it's obviously upon us. It's wintertime.
Okay.
So
if you
say
guys-
we were on scene and the controllers, smashed, wet, damaged. Your first thing would be to what? Pick up the phone
I would
and call
assess
him?
him and see how he is, treat him accordingly, and then pick up the phone. Yeah, and that's what you would do for anything is pick up the phone. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Outside of it being completely crushed, you're gonna wait for a more.
Okay.
You're more apt to have a problem with one of the percutaneous thing getting cut or something like that. Because these could get pinched off or broken if any
Right.
of those wires broke in there.
Another common EMS thing I always touch on this. So it's winter, so they can kind of conceal this equipment pretty well. I didn't even know he had it until I walked in, and I see this every day. So if he's under coats and you don't know this person has an L-VAD, when you get to the scene and you take a pulse and they're non-responsive, your first thing is to start, you cut the shirt off and start chest compressions, right? Now that you've talked to me, you need to remember, make sure they don't have an L-VAD, because a lot, you guys get your big fat scissors out, and you cut open the shirt, and now you just made a bad day a really, really bad one. So not a whole lot you can do about a completely severed percutaneous lead. Does that make sense? It happens.
Don't cut the red wire.
Huh?
Don't cut the red wire.
Yeah, it's like that.
Now, if that's your system, that's the HeartMate 2 he's got.
Yep.
Do all of them look like the 6-gun dealio he's wearing?
Pretty much. I'll be honest with you, I'm not here to sell you this, I don't sell it. No saleswoman here. There's another pump, it's called Heartwear. Pretty much the same idea from what I've gathered. Obviously, I can't speak to it. That would be wrong. I just don't know enough about it, but I know that same idea. Cord, something, battery. I don't think anybody in Indiana is doing that yet. Heartwear is still investigational, not FDA approved. It will be FDA approved. I would say 5 years, maybe 3 years, 4 years from now, you'll need to have training for that type and then the Heartwear type.
There's a couple companies that are making custom-made vests, and to where the batteries will be like slid down in pockets and monitor, you know, in the front, where everything's kind of more contained. Because with the way this is, if you bend over, your batteries slide around and, you know, get caught and stuff. Like I was in Chipotle and went to slide across the bench, and my wire was under me a little bit, and it started rolling up. And so I stopped and looked, and I, you know, before I got it twisted too bad, because I could have, you know, pinched a wire off then, you know, just sliding across the bench getting in. So everything's would be more away from your lap there.
The patients and their family, they come up with interesting ways to conceal things. A lot of the younger girls will get like, you know, like big purse and cut holes in it, they come up with things. A lot of the guys go to like Cabela's and they'll get fishing vests and they'll have one battery each side. And as long as the stuff is secure and not yanking at this cord and you can get to it, they let these patients do what they want to do. So will everyone you ever see forever have like that same black thing? Probably not, but it'll be something similar. Battery on each side, cord, computer.
Yes. Can I show you how this is in here so that you can see this?
Yeah, like I
Stand
said.
up.
Take it off.
Strip it.
Well, you really see the cord comes out right here. And
12 inches usually.
And,
About 12 inches.
and this is the one that's hooked to the controller.
Yeah.
And we have to make sure, and you would have to make sure if you was with someone, that this does not pull out. Because if this pulls out, it can rip their skin and stuff and go in and
Right.
cause damage inside. So you have to make sure that that doesn't get ripped out.
I guess this is like a cath tube holder.
It's fully capped. I put a fully capped
Yeah, that's a good idea.
tube
So
in here to hold
this is kind
up.
of like the percutaneous lead connecting to the system controller situation. If it's not broke, don't fix it.
Right.
So unless he's profusely bleeding from this site, just don't worry about it. If he is, I wouldn't even take that off. I would just put more over it. You know what I mean? Just like this. Never unplug this. Just forget it. If it's locked, forget it's there.
And on the batteries, when you do hook the batteries up, it's white to white.
Well, it don't really.
It doesn't matter with the batteries. There's no color code on the batteries, just on the 20-foot cord.
On the 20-foot cord.
On the 20-foot, it's just a cord, gray cord, and then it Y's off, and then there's black and white.
And it has to be hooked to the
Right.
white to the white.
If you were taking him from batteries to wall, which you'll never do, but if you did, same thing, one at a time, white to white, black to black. White is what carries the numbers that will register on his display module. You don't need to know any of this, but on the cord, yeah. If you were ever transporting or transferring him from battery power like he's on now to the wall power, one at a time, black to black, white to white. Makes sense. But on batteries, it doesn't matter. Each battery and its clip are both the same.
So there's a chance we could go into a house where somebody's hooked up